Have you ever asked yourself why we chase after happiness until we're exhausted, wanting this and that, only to experience fleeting fulfillment only to be replaced by emptiness? What are we truly searching for? Or is what we call happiness actually poison coated in sugar, an invisible cage that traps our souls, preventing us from finding true freedom? Before we embark on a journey to explore the mysteries of the mind and unlock these shackles together, I ask that you all please subscribe, like, and share this video to spread the light of wisdom to those who are lost, and to encourage our Panya Dhamma channel. The atmosphere around us in the big city right now is so chaotic and confusing. The soft, bright lights alternate with the dark shadows of the tall buildings. People bustle about, their faces filled with hurried activity, each with a destination they believe will bring fulfillment in life. Some strive for wealth, some seek love, some crave acceptance and fame. But when we step back and examine the bigger picture carefully, we see an endless cycle, the cycle the Buddha called samsara, driven by the most powerful gear, the 5 sensual pleasures. Sensual pleasures are not just about love or sex, as many mistakenly believe, but they are the threads that bind us to the world of the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. They are a subtle and insidious bondage that, it comes not through coercion, but through pleasure, satisfaction, and infatuation. Imagine a tiny butterfly that flies into the most beautiful flower garden. Each flower is fragrant and alluring, with vibrant colors that attract the eye. The butterfly flies from one flower to another, happily sipping the nectar. It's unaware that the nectar contains a sticky resin that gradually clings to its wings. The more flowers it flies to, the heavier its wings become, until finally, it can no longer fly back to the vast sky. It's imprisoned in the flower garden it thought was paradise. The human mind is no different from that butterfly. We allow our eyes to, we chase after beautiful images, let our ears be captivated by melodious sounds, let our noses be immersed in fragrant scents, let our tongues be charmed by delicious flavors, and let our skin yearn for soft, gentle touches. We accumulate these pleasures in our memory, and when that happiness fades, our minds become restless, yearning to experience it again. This is a very profound psychological mechanism, a dopamine cycle in the brain that compels us to chase after rewards that can never be fully satisfied. Being bound by these 5 sensual pleasures is not a repulsive sin. It is the nature of living beings still shrouded in ignorance or lack of enlightenment. We have been taught since birth to seek happiness from outside of society and the world. Popular trends have led us to believe that owning a big house, eating luxurious food, and wearing expensive clothes are indicators of success and happiness. We dedicate our entire lives to these things without ever questioning whether they truly bring lasting happiness. Slowly close your eyes and reflect on your memories. Think about the first item you wanted so much you couldn't sleep. When you finally acquired it, how long did that feeling of joy last? A week, a month, or perhaps just a few days? Then it became just another ordinary item in your house, and your desire moved on to bigger, more expensive goals. This is the nature of sensual desire. It's like drinking water. Drinking the sea to quench thirst only makes you thirstier. The more you indulge, the more you crave, never reaching a point of contentment. Wise men of the past and psychologists of the present have discovered the same truth. The great psychologist Kam Chung once said, "Those who look outward are asleep. Those who look inward are awakened." Looking outward means letting the mind chase the five sensual pleasures, but looking inward means returning to observe the reality within our own minds. It's about observing how desire arises, how it persists, and how it subsides. This observation is the first step in unlocking this invisible cage. When we delve deeper into the origin of these feelings, we find that they begin from small things. This is called sensory contact, or the interaction between the sensory organs and external stimuli, the eyes encountering images, the ears encountering sounds. This process happens so quickly that we hardly notice it. In the moment of contact, our mind, like a skilled craftsman, begins to work. It will immediately process and shape the story, adding colors of emotions, likes, and dislikes to what we perceive. For example, imagine walking past a bakery. The fragrant aroma of freshly baked bread wafts into your nose. At first, it's just a scent, a chemical reaction floating in the air. But a fraction of a second later, your mind will draw on past memories, blending them in, remembering the sweet taste, the soft texture, the warm feeling of eating that bread. The first time, the desire builds up intensely, starting from just the scent wafting in the air. This becomes a driving force that compels your body to walk into the store and pay for it to satisfy that craving. That's how sensual pleasure works. It lures us with short-term enjoyment but hides a huge long-term trap. That trap is attachment. When we frequently experience pleasure from something, we begin to cling to it, believing it to be ours, that the pleasure is ours. And whenever that thing changes or disappears, excruciating suffering immediately takes its place. Psychologically, this is explained through the theory of habituation. Humans have the ability to adapt to changes in habits. Happiness can be very quick to find, no matter how big our new house or how luxurious our new car is. As time passes, the excitement and joy will gradually subside, returning to a balance, and we'll start looking for new things to stimulate that happiness even further. It's like running on a treadmill that never reaches the finish line. You run until you're exhausted, but you're still in the same place. Therefore, letting go of these temptations isn't about suppressing feelings or torturing yourself by denying all worldly pleasures. Buddhism doesn't teach us to escape into a dark cave and become oblivious, but rather to be aware, to be mindful, like a gatekeeper, observing when our eyes see a form, when our mind begins to interpret it as beautiful or desirable. Once we recognize this, a brewing storm can easily dissipate into a gentle breeze. The greatest challenge for humanity in the digital age is that we are surrounded by 24/7 stimuli. The smartphone in your hand is the gateway to a world of images, sounds, and stories that stimulate desire without limits. Social media is designed on the principle of dopamine. Every like, every comment, every short video you scroll through continuously feeds your desires, preventing your mind from ever resting or experiencing true peace. When the mind is filled with turmoil and swayed by external stimuli, we lose a tremendous amount of life energy, leading to mental exhaustion. The way we feel every day, even without strenuous activity, stems from this very reason. A mind that constantly chases after pleasure and suppresses displeasure throughout the day becomes weary and lacks energy. Conversely, if we begin to practice observation, observing the desires that arise without jumping in and immersing ourselves in them, like someone standing on the riverbank watching the stream of thoughts and emotions flow by without jumping in to swim with them, we will begin to feel a certain coolness, a refined peace arising from emptiness, free from embellishment. It is a happiness that does not depend on material things or external people. This refined peace is not about closing our eyes and escaping the world or plugging our ears to avoid perceiving anything around us, because as long as we have breath and a physical body, the interaction between our internal senses and external stimuli is inevitable. But the secret to escaping this cage lies in seeing through the veil of fabrication to see the truth hidden behind form and sound, the most powerful frontline confrontation among the five senses. Consider the sights we see. Humans are designed to respond intensely to visual imagery from the moment we wake until we fall asleep. We are surrounded by a competition of presentations of beauty, whether it's the beauty of the human body, clothing, jewelry, or even the magnificent architecture of skyscrapers reflecting the morning sun. This is the psychology of visual perception. Evolution explains that we seek balance and perfection because it is a sign of survival and good health. But in today's world, this instinct has been corrupted and amplified into an boundless obsession. We spend hours in front of mirrors trying to erase the signs of time, adding makeup to conceal natural decay. We endure painful surgery and pay exorbitant prices for creams made from rare ingredients, all to cling to youth for as long as possible. In reality, this body is a structure destined to crumble. With every passing second, cells in our bodies age and die one by one. The attempt to stop this change is therefore futile. It's like trying to block a raging river with your bare hands. The more you resist, the more exhausted you become. The more you cling to beauty, the darker the fear of aging and death casts a shadow over the depths of your mind. And it's not just our own physical appearance. We're also infatuated with the appearances of others and external possessions. We judge people's worth by their looks and success by the brand of car parked in front of their house or the designer label on their handbag. When our eyes encounter things that society has labeled as expensive and high quality, our uncontrolled minds will immediately leap to grasp the feeling of possession. This current of desire is so strong that it can blind reason, causing many to accumulate overwhelming debt just for a fraction of that admiration. From the fleeting gaze of a stranger, this is the cruelty of lust in the category of form. It deceives us into chasing reflections in water that can never truly be grasped. When we consider sound, or what our ears perceive, we find an equally profound subtlety. Sound is a vibration traveling through the air, striking the eardrum. From a physics perspective, it has no substance, no weight, and disappears in a fraction of a second. But why does this invisible vibration have such a powerful influence on our feelings? A single compliment from a boss or lover can make our hearts swell. The whole world seem bright as if sunlight has shone down in the middle of the night. We become addicted to praise, craving flattery. Acceptance from those around us is like that of a thirsty person needing water to sustain life. Conversely, a few words of gossip, criticism, or insults can become sharp knives that cut into our feelings, leaving emotional wounds that may take years to heal. Some people dwell on those words, thinking about them over and over in their minds, crying alone in the darkness, allowing the past to haunt them repeatedly. Buddhism points out that both praise and criticism are part of the worldly realm. They arise, exist for a moment, and then fade away. No sound resonates forever. But immense suffering arises from attachment, or clinging, from binding our ego to these things. In response to the words of others, we create a mental image of ourselves, and when any sound impacts this image, we react with anger or elation. Besides human speech, we are also captivated by music and beautiful singing. We put on headphones to escape the chaos of reality, immersing ourselves in sounds that evoke emotions of sadness, loneliness, or exhilaration. Music is a beautiful art form, but it is also a powerful tool that pulls our minds away from present moment awareness. We fear silence because in that stillness, we hear our own chaotic thoughts most clearly. Therefore, we seek external sounds to drown out the cries from within our souls. When we begin to realize the influence of the sights and sounds that control our lives, so practicing mindfulness is like building a shield against invisible dangers. Every time our eyes see something beautiful or ugly, every time our ears hear a sound that is pleasing or unpleasant, take a moment to pause, take a deep breath, and tell yourself that this is a changing image, this is a fading sound. Don't rush to judge, don't rush to jump into the fray with the emotions that arise. Doing this often will gradually loosen the knots that bind us to attachment. The mind will begin to become stable and free, no longer easily swayed by the winds of the external world. This paves the way to a deeper understanding that awaits us in the next sensory experience, not just the images we see or the sounds we hear. While the ears are the only organs that manipulate our lives and nourish our desires, there are three other threads working silently, deeply rooted in the primal instincts of humanity: smell, taste, and touch. These three work in harmony to bind our souls to carnal pleasures, making it difficult to escape. Starting with smell, or what the nose inhales, among the five senses, scent is most strongly connected to the deepest part of the brain associated with memory and emotions. The limbic system responds to smell faster than the logical part of the brain can process it. Have you ever walked past a stranger and happened to smell a familiar perfume? That scent, an old flame, gone for years, in just a fraction of a second, as molecules of scent waft through and hit the olfactory cells in your nasal cavity, all memories, images of faces, smiles, touches, even the pain of the breakup, surge back violently into your heart like a broken dam, even though in reality, only a stranger has walked away. The global perfume and fragrance industry, with its immense value, is built on a foundation of obsession with scent. We smell flowers, the first raindrops on dry earth, the aroma of cooking food. These fragrances create satisfaction and relaxation, but at the same time, they turn us into slaves, constantly seeking out those scents to indulge ourselves whenever we encounter them. When faced with foul, rotten, or disgusting smells, the mind immediately reacts with aversion, rejection, and resentment. We forget that both pleasant fragrances and foul stench are merely reactions of gases and chemicals in the air that have no inherent meaning. It is our minds that assign values and label things as good or bad. Next is the taste buds, which could be called sensual pleasure, and which modern humans are heavily addicted to. Eating is no longer solely for nourishing the body. It has become an art, a lifestyle, and a tool for satisfying desires. We travel across oceans to foreign countries, sit in long car rides, or queue for hours. Overnight cravings for a Michelin-starred restaurant can be tempting. Our tongues are composed of countless tiny taste buds sensitive to sweetness, saltiness, sourness, bitterness, and umami. When a pleasing flavor touches our tongue, our brains release a flood of happiness hormones. But notice how fleeting that pleasure from food is. It lasts only for the moment the food is in our mouths. The moment we swallow it, the exquisite flavors meticulously crafted vanish, leaving only matter to be digested and turned into waste. Yet, the mind, filled with lust, refuses to let go. It continues to crave, storing that flavor in its memory and sending commands. We struggle to acquire wealth in order to relive that pleasure again and again. Many enlightened monks therefore teach us to contemplate food before eating, or what is called tankanika pakavakanda, to remind ourselves that we eat to quell hunger, to smell to empower the body for good deeds, not to fuel desires, and finally, the touch that binds us most firmly is the physical touch, or photafa. The skin is the organ that covers the body and has the largest surface area. Humans crave comfort. We want a soft bed, cool air conditioning on hot days, and fine silk clothing. And deeper than that, we yearn for the touch of love and affection, the touch of hugs, hand-holding, and sexual desire. The most basic instinct for procreation and the obsession with physical touch are the source of intense attachment. We mistakenly believe this body is ours, that the body of the one we love is ours. When our body is touched painfully, or when it faces illness and aging, we suffer terribly. This attachment to touch creates the strongest cage, because it is a cage built from our own flesh and blood. We are deceived by lust into believing that the warmth of someone's embrace or a fleeting sexual pleasure can fill the black hole of emptiness in our hearts. But in reality, it only digs that hole deeper and wider. When the five senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, are combined, they form a perfect matrix of illusion. It creates an illusory world that seems so real that we hardly suspect we are imprisoned. Every sensory contact is a poisoned lure. If we swallow it without mindfulness or discernment, the poison of attachment seeps into our bloodstream, creating a never-ending cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. The journey to the essence of practice, to shed these layers of infatuation, is not about escaping the world, but about awakening to face reality with a resolute heart and a mind as unwavering as a mountain. Once we can see beyond the facade of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, a startling truth will emerge. Our five senses, the complex eyes, the delicate ears, the sensitive skin, are actually just tools, mere pipes carrying raw information from the outside world. The eyes don't know that a rose is beautiful, the ears don't know that classical music is lovely, and the tongue doesn't appreciate the taste of exquisite food. These are merely hardware that transmits nerve signals. But the one who truly interprets, assigns value, and experiences pleasure or pain is only one entity. It is the mind, or the sixth sense, that is the supreme commander hidden behind all these veils. Imagine our mind as a master painter sitting in a dark room. This painter has never seen the outside world himself. He works using only the colors and canvases brought to him by his five assistants. When his eyes see the image, the assistants bring the red of excitement. When his ears hear the insults, the assistants bring the black of anger. This painter receives these materials and uses the brush of memories and past experiences to paint onto the canvas of feelings, creating a painting which is called conditioning or conditioned phenomena in Buddhism. The problem that causes humans to suffer and is trapped in the snare of sensual pleasures from which they cannot escape is not. It's not because this world has too many beautiful things or too many delicious things, but because the painter in our hearts never stops painting, not even for a second. The moment they finish painting happiness and have enjoyed it, they crumple up the canvas and immediately demand new material from their five assistants. Our minds work like wild monkeys that jump to one branch, and when the fruit on that branch is gone, they leave the old branch and jump to grab a new one, jumping endlessly without rest, without satisfaction, and without ever finding true peace. This process is so profound and rapid that we are hardly ever aware of it. The moment a sensation or feeling of pleasure arises from indulging in sensual desires, the mind creates a state called craving or yearning. Lust is the most powerful driving force in the human universe. It overrides reason and morality, and can manipulate people to do anything to satisfy its desires. When we let lust control the steering wheel of our lives, we become like puppeteers pulled by invisible threads. We think we have the freedom to choose what we eat, buy, and love, but in reality, we are acting according to the dictates of brain chemicals and deeply ingrained desires in our subconscious. The terrifying thing about being imprisoned by this manipulative mind is that we don't even realize we're locked up. We decorate our cage with luxurious furniture, play soft, pleasant music, and spray expensive perfume throughout. We take pride in our woven cage. The words we create with our sweat and toil throughout our lives, without ever realizing that the cage is still there, day in and day out. As long as we depend on external things to stimulate our happiness, as long as our emotions swing up and down according to the words of others or the amount of money in our bank accounts, we remain mere faithful slaves to the cycle of rebirth, prisoners holding the key to their own cell in their hands, yet too afraid to unlock that door to the vastness of freedom. The key to unlocking this cell of infatuation is not prayer or supplication to a sacred being, nor is it physical torture to extinguish desires as ancient monks mistakenly believed, but that key is a simple yet powerful weapon that is readily available. Within each of us lies something called mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't an intangible religious principle. It's a high-level psychological skill, a mechanism of the prefrontal cortex that functions to recognize, observe, and control behavior. A psychiatrist and concentration camp survivor once made a golden statement, incredibly relevant to Buddhist principles. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. Within that space is our power and freedom to choose how to respond. Mindfulness is about expanding that space. In a normal state where the mind lacks mindfulness, the space between stimulus and reaction is very narrow, almost zero. As soon as the eye sees something appealing, the mind immediately develops a desire. Our bodies instinctively lunge forward to grab what we want, an automatic mechanism that works faster than the blink of an eye. But when we begin to practice mindfulness, we are training ourselves to add pauses to this equation. When the aroma of food wafts to our noses, instead of letting the craving overwhelm us and our mouths water, mindfulness acts like a CCTV camera, observing our body's reaction. It tells us, now the smell has hit me. My mind is beginning to process the image of the food. The feeling of wanting to eat is building up. Quote. This objective observation, without judging whether the craving is right or wrong, without trying to suppress it, and without jumping in to act on it, this is the magic of extinguishing suffering. The moment we step back and diligently observe the craving that once seemed so vast and overwhelming, the power to control us will quickly lose its energy. It's like a fire that's cut off from oxygen. Eventually, it will slowly die out, leaving only emptiness and inner peace. Mindfulness practice isn't complicated at all. We can easily start with our own breath. The breath is the best anchor to bring the mind back to the present moment. Every time you feel strongly drawn to sensual desires, whether it's shopping, social media, or sexual urges, slowly close your eyes and take a deep breath. Feel the coolness of the air flowing past your nose, feel the expansion of your chest and abdomen, and then slowly exhale, feeling the relaxation. By repeating this process for just a few breaths, you will be amazed at how the restlessness and agitation you felt moments before will vanish. Your mind, once blinded by desire, will become bright, light, and strong enough to reason and consider whether what you are striving for is truly necessary for your life, or merely an illusion created by your mind to deceive itself. As you practice mindfulness more often until it becomes a habit, the sword of mindfulness will become sharp, cutting through the threads of attachment and severing the cycle of fabrication early on. You will still see the beauty of this world and hear the beautiful music as before, but what will be different is that you will no longer be a slave to it. You will experience this world with mindfulness. The joy is like a bird soaring in the sky, feeling the wind and sunlight but leaving no trace in the air. It is a life of freedom and grace, drawing closer to the realm of liberation or nirvana with every breath. This journey on the path of awareness is not the end, but merely the dawn of a new beginning. When we use the sword of mindfulness to create space between stimuli and responses, our minds will begin to stabilize and become calmer, as if a raging storm has temporarily subsided. However, the true enemy hidden behind the 5 sensual pleasures is not just desire or lust. It has deep and subtle roots. Psychologists and Buddhists call this attachment to permanence, or the ingrained belief that things will last forever. Imagine strolling along the beach in the evening, the golden sunlight reflecting off the waves crashing against the shore. You've spent hours meticulously building the most elaborate sandcastle, complete with towers, walls, and a moat. You feel proud and love this sandcastle very much. But as time passes, the moon rises, the tide rises, and wave after wave begins to crash in, gradually destroying your sandcastle's walls until finally, your beautiful sandcastle crumbles, disappearing into the sand and water. If you cry, wail, and angrily beat the water, finding something to destroy your sandcastle, passers-by would likely look at you in surprise, because everyone knows that a sandcastle built by the sea cannot withstand the tides. It's an unavoidable law of nature. Yet in real life, we act no differently than those who cry over their sandcastles. We devote ourselves to building castles of relationships, castles of fame, castles of wealth, and castles of youthful bodies, deceiving ourselves into believing they will stand tall and defy time. Deep down, we all know that everything in this world is subject to the law of impermanence. The immense suffering from losing a loved one, losing a job, or falling ill isn't 100% directly caused by those events themselves. That's true, but most of the pain comes from us imposing our expectations on reality. We expect the people we love to stay with us until old age. We expect this body to remain healthy forever. When the reality of nature reveals itself to reclaim these things, the mind, filled with attachment, is shocked, unable to accept it, and screams in agony. This is where Vipassana meditation plays a crucial role. Vipassana is not about sitting with your eyes closed to escape the world or creating visions of wonderful things. Vipassana means enlightenment. It's about opening your eyes and seeing the reality of form, sound, smell, taste, and touch as they truly are, without filters or embellishments. Once we have mindfulness as a solid foundation, we must move forward by using wisdom. By deeply examining every sensory experience that impacts our surroundings, as we begin to practice Vipassana meditation, our perception will change completely. The birdsong, once pleasing to the ear, will be perceived as sound waves that strike the senses and then fade away. The sweetness of morning coffee, which once invigorates us, will be perceived as a temporary chemical reaction on the tongue that quickly disappears. We will begin to see that no sensual pleasure is enduring enough for us to cling to as a source of spiritual support. Everything is like a flowing river that comes and goes. Trying to hold on to the water will only lead to a loss of energy and emptiness. In scientific terms, this is the second law of thermodynamics, or T-entropy explains a state called entropy, which states that everything in the universe is inevitably moving towards disorder and decay. The stars in the sky are burning themselves up and awaiting their demise. The cells in our bodies are regressing and deteriorating every second. When we combine this scientific truth with Buddhist principles, we discover the amazing truth that the Buddha discovered this universal law more than 2,500 years ago. Awareness of impermanence doesn't make us pessimistic, depressed, or hopeless. Rather, it's a key that liberates us from our deepest fears. When we wholeheartedly accept that everything must change, in the face of change and decay, we will begin to live in the present moment almost 100%. We will hug our loved ones tighter, knowing that the time we have together is limited. We will savor the food in front of us with appreciation, without thinking about the next meal. We will perform our work to the best of our ability, without being attached to the results or whether or not people will appreciate it. The eyes of Vipassana will transform our entire world into a teacher. Every pain of separation, every disappointment of not getting what we desire, will become a whispered reminder from nature that, see, nothing truly belongs to us. Quote, and when the mind becomes accustomed to letting go, accepting the arising and passing away of the 5 sensual pleasures without interfering or clinging to them, other heavy burdens that have weighed down the chest will gradually fade away. The traces of suffering that have oppressed the soul will lessen, paving the way for pure joy to shine forth. And when we begin to see the truth of impermanence, the true spiritual shedding process will begin. I must be honest, it's not a beautiful, romantic, or rosé-petaled process as idealized movies or philosophical books often portray. On the contrary, it's a time when the mind faces excruciating agony, similar to a patient going through drug withdrawal, or what the medical field calls withdrawal symptoms. When we firmly decide to stop feeding ourselves, by eliminating the 5 sensual pleasures, we reduce our social media use, which constantly stimulates dopamine. We stop eating to relieve stress, we stop shopping to fill the void in our hearts, and we withdraw from seeking validation from others. The noisy atmosphere of the outside world will be replaced by a profound silence. This silence doesn't mean the absence of sound, but rather a silence that echoes loudly within our own minds. In that silence, the mind, accustomed to intense stimulation throughout its life, will begin to panic. It will struggle, become agitated, and scream for the same old food. It will create an intense, almost unbearable feeling of boredom. This boredom is the first barrier that prevents most people from giving up. Defeated and turning back to sensual pleasures, we can't bear to sit idly by with nothing to see, nothing to hear, nothing to eat. We feel like life is worthless, meaningless, and terrifyingly empty. This emptiness, or the voice, is a very interesting psychological state. News reports say that humans will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid confronting their own inner selves. We create hectic schedules, answering phone calls all day, socializing nightly to mask our fear of being alone with our own thoughts. Because when we're alone, the sediment of emotions, sadness, anger, guilt, that we've tried to suppress by indulging in sensual pleasures, it will begin to float to the surface of the water of consciousness. Imagine a pond with mud at the bottom. As long as we constantly stir the water with a stick, it will become cloudy, and we won't be able to see what's at the bottom. Chasing sensual pleasures is like stirring the water to prevent it from settling. But when we stop stirring, stop seeking external sensations, the muddy water will gradually calm down and become clear, allowing us to clearly see the mud and debris hidden at the bottom. This is the most painful moment because we inevitably confront our emotional wounds, past traumas, and the darkness within ourselves. The mind's desires will use every defense mechanism to lure us back to stirring the water again. It will whisper in our ear, "Go eat something delicious instead of sitting here. Why torture yourself? Watch an episode of a TV series to relieve stress." It will create doubts about the path you're on, and generate countless excuses to distract you from mindfulness. This is the greatest test for practitioners. It's an unseen internal war that impacts the spirit most severely. The key to overcoming this detoxification period is not to run away and not to fight. When boredom attacks, simply observe it. Acknowledge the discomfort in your body, acknowledge the turmoil in your mind. Don't try to suppress it, don't try to find something to do to relieve the boredom. Just watch it passively, like watching a storm raging outside your window. Your role is simply to be a safe observer within yourself. Before long, that storm of anxiety will weaken and dissipate on its own, according to the law of impermanence. When we can endure this spiritual withdrawal more often and for longer periods, a miracle will occur. The once murky pond will become crystal clear, and the emptiness that was once terrifying and oppressive will transform into an incomparably light and comfortable feeling. We will begin to discover that within the profound silence we have been running from our entire lives, there is actually a happiness more refined, deep, and lasting than the fleeting pleasures of the five senses combined. It is the happiness of freedom, a happiness that does not depend on anything, that does not ask from anyone, a happiness arising from the serene coolness of a mind truly liberated from bondage. The tranquility that arises from a steadfast mind and overcoming spiritual withdrawal is like an oasis in a scorching desert. When we stop chasing after the senses of sight, taste, smell, sound, and touch, we taste a refined happiness we've never experienced before, a happiness that can't be bought with money, doesn't require approval from anyone, and doesn't involve competition. However, nature often hides the most subtle tests on this path to enlightenment in what seems like the safest places. This sweet tranquility can become an invisible cage, a new cage even stronger than the five sensual pleasures. In psychology and meditation, we call this state attachment to goodness or clinging to emptiness. When the mind experiences profound peace, our ego, or self, which was once addicted to chaos, transforms. It dons a pure white robe, acting as a virtuous being who despises the turmoil of the outside world. We begin to feel irritated when we have to face and interact with people in society, becoming intolerant of noise and distractions. We start to view those who still chase after worldly desires as inferior or lacking in understanding of truth. This arrogance and pride in our perceived goodness is the potent poison that the ego concocts to deceive us and lead us astray. Consider this carefully. Who is truly experiencing peace, and who is truly disgusted by chaos? The answer is me, or the ego. As long as there is someone who seeks peace, we will never truly find it. To escape the cycle of ego, we simply shift from being addicted to worldly material things to being addicted to spiritual emotions instead. It's like someone escaping a rusty iron cage and then entering a cage made of gold and diamonds. No matter how beautiful and comfortable the cage is, it still restricts our freedom day in and day out. The Buddha pointed out the ultimate truth that completely destroys this wall of ego, the principle of anatta, or the absence of a true self. He taught us to dismantle what we call I into its constituent parts called the five aggregates, khandhas, form, body, feeling, sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutrality, perception, memory and recognition, mental formations, the conditioning of the mind, and consciousness, awareness through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. When we take, expanding our awareness and wisdom to examine these components piece by piece, we discover the ironic truth that none of them possess any inherent ownership or self-identity. This body is merely the four elements, earth, water, wind, and fire, borrowed from nature, absorbing nutrients, water, and air for temporary nourishment, and ultimately returning to the earth. Feelings of happiness or suffering are merely chemical reactions in the brain that arise and then fade. Thoughts that float into our minds are just electrical currents traveling back and forth along the nerve network. If everything is merely a natural phenomenon interdependent on each other, then where exactly is the self that harbors anger, hatred, and desires for the five sensual pleasures? The answer is that the self is Psychological illusions are merely concepts created by the brain for convenience in survival and communication in society, like a tornado. We call it a storm, but in reality, it has no tangible form. It's just swirling winds, air pressure, and dust temporarily merging. Once these elements disperse, the storm disappears, nothing remains. Our minds and selves work through the same mechanism. When this level of awareness penetrates the heart, the greatest transformation occurs. The struggle against the 5 sensual pleasures will no longer be about suppression or resistance, because when there is no hungry person, there is no need to struggle to find food. When there is no self, the owner of image doesn't need to be adorned with praise or expensive clothes. The desires for sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch will quietly fall away on their own, like dry leaves detached from a large tree, without force, without conflict, without suffering. Only a vast emptiness, filled with true freedom, remains. Realizing this non-existence frees us from attachment to the 5 senses. The question many often wonder is, how will we live on this earth then? Will we become emotionless stones, indifferent to everything, or will we escape society to practice asceticism in the deep forest? The answer is no. Achieving the essence of truth does not destroy our humanity. Rather, it elevates us to a more perfect and beautiful state. The Buddha did not abandon the world after enlightenment. Instead, he spent the next 45 years traveling throughout the Indian subcontinent to teach sentient beings. He continued to gaze upon the beauty of nature, ate the food offered by villagers, and interacted with people of all classes. But what was fundamentally different was his perilous state. It was like water rolling off a lotus leaf. No matter how much water fell, it never soaked or dampened the leaf. This is the highest art of living, the art of coexisting with the world. To avoid being enslaved by the world, ancient sages likened an awakened mind to a lotus flower. The lotus is a very strange flower. It doesn't grow in clean soil, but rather takes root in foul-smelling, dirty mud. The lotus uses this mud as nutrients to nourish its stem, allowing it to sprout through the water and receive sunlight. And when it blooms, its petals are pure and clean, completely devoid of the mud from which it originated. This mud is like the world we live in, a world full of the 5 sensual pleasures, alluring sights, tempting sounds, intoxicating scents, intoxicating tastes, and captivating touches. We cannot deny or destroy this mud because it is a part of nature. But we can learn to use it to our advantage. We can use technology and smartphones to work and connect with people without becoming slaves to social media. We can wear beautiful and appropriate clothes without tying our self-worth to price tags. We can savor delicious meals with our family with appreciation without letting gluttony take over. The secret to blooming like a lotus above the water is cultivating 2 virtues alongside mindfulness and wisdom: loving kindness and equanimity. When our ego shrinks, the space in our hearts expands. The love we have for others will not be worldly love tainted with lust, possessiveness, or expectations. Instead of reacting emotionally, it will transform into loving kindness, a pure love and a sincere desire to see fellow human beings and all living creatures free from suffering. We will see that those who are angry, those who are harming others, or those who are engrossed in material possessions are actually fellow sufferers, imprisoned and tormented by their own desires. We will not retaliate with hatred, but will look at them with compassion. At the same time, we must maintain equanimity or detachment as a balance. Equanimity is not coldness or indifference to the world's problems, but a neutral state of mind. When we have done our best, we have love for our children and grandchildren, guiding and caring for them fully. However, when the time comes for them to choose their own life path or when they face disappointment, we must accept with equanimity that everyone has their own karma and path. We cannot bear all of anyone's suffering. Walking the middle path, or the path of moderation, will allow us to live in perfect harmony with the currents of the world. The great Greek philosopher Socrates once walked through a market filled with luxury goods and said the impressive sentence, "Look how many things I do not need." This is the attitude of a truly independent mind. We can admire the beauty of this world, walking past shops displaying beautiful goods with a smile and a joyful heart, free from any feelings of longing or lack. Allows us to live a rich and successful life in the world if that is the result of honest and dedicated service. However, we must not allow material possessions to define who we are. When our minds do not entrust their happiness to external sensual pleasures, happiness arises from within, a happiness born of peace, lightness, and detachment. It is a state where, even though the body remains on the earth, the spirit soars freely above the clouds of samsara, gracefully and majestically. This is how we understand the principle of a lotus blooming above the water and realize the art of living in harmony with the world without being tainted. But in the reality of life, everyone has probably experienced feeling defeated by themselves, haven't they? Some days we make firm promises to ourselves. We won't get angry, we won't eat unhealthy sweets, we won't be swayed by anyone's provocative words. But just hearing one sarcastic remark, or simply walking past a bakery with its delicious aroma, all our carefully constructed intentions crumble easily. Anger surges, making our face red, or food cravings overwhelm us, causing us to impulsively grab a pastry without realizing it. Why are our minds so fragile and easily influenced, even though we have intelligence and know what is right and wrong? The answer to this riddle lies within the most mysterious and darkest realm of humanity, a realm that Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, called the subconscious. In Buddhism, this profound state was explained thousands of years ago as anasaya kilesa, or latent defilements ingrained in one's nature. Imagine a giant iceberg floating in the freezing ocean. The pure white tip that protrudes above the water, reflecting the sunlight, represents our consciousness. It's the part that we perceive, the reasoning, the logic, the good intentions we have each day. But that's only 10% of the entire iceberg. The remaining 90% is a massive chunk of ice submerged beneath the dark and icy surface. It hides silently, yet it is the crucial factor that determines the direction the entire iceberg drifts with the ocean currents. Is the subconscious mind. It's the largest storage facility in the universe, recording every experience, every pain, every fear, and every desire from the moment we open our eyes. Or, viewed from the perspective of the cycle of rebirth, it's the repository of karmic traces from countless past lives. When we repeatedly indulge in sensual pleasures, whether it's the joy of touch or the pain of hurtful words, those experiences don't disappear. They settle at the bottom of the subconscious, becoming latent tendencies waiting to erupt. These latent desires work like time bombs, ready to explode. It's ignited the moment an external sensory experience hits you. Have you ever wondered why some people have an intense fear of loud noises even though the sound isn't dangerous, or why we feel an immediate dislike for some strangers even before speaking to them? It's because the appearance, sound, or smell of these things triggers memories in the subconscious that are connected to past traumas. The subconscious then sends out warning signals in the form of intense and irrational emotions to protect us from the pain it remembers. When latent desires are awakened, they send out a powerful surge of energy that penetrates the surface and overwhelms our conscious mind in a split second: intense craving, uncontrollable anger, or sadness. The deepest aspects of our minds are all products of latent tendencies. In this state, logic and reason are shut down. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for analytical thinking, surrenders to the limbic system, which controls emotions and primal instincts. We become slaves to sensual pleasures repeatedly, not because we are foolish, but because we are fighting against programs that have been deeply ingrained for countless lifetimes. Another great psychologist, Zhang Yung, called this dark part of the mind the shadow. He believed that every human being has a hidden shadow, the dark side, the side we deny, the side we consider ugly or sinful. Society teaches us to suppress these shadows, lock them away in the basement of our minds, and then wear a mask of goodness to live our lives. The deeper we suppress it, the more powerful its shadow becomes, and it will find ways to manifest itself through dreams, slips of the tongue, or uncontrollable addictive behaviors of sensual pleasure, to release the pent-up tension within. The journey to relinquish the 5 sensual pleasures and attain liberation cannot be achieved through mere brute force or superficial suppression of desires, because that is merely cutting the grass on the surface. Its rotten roots remain deeply entrenched in the subconscious, waiting to receive water and sunlight to regrow. To uproot this weed of desire, we need profound mindfulness, or a mindfulness of the highest degree, a mindfulness that acts like a powerful spotlight, illuminating the dark surface and reaching the very bottom. When we begin practicing meditation and consistently being mindful of our emotions in daily life, we begin to observe the workings of these latent tendencies. We see the moment anger arises from emptiness, and the small ripples of desire ignited by fading memories. The moment the light of mindfulness shines on the shadow of desire, that shadow loses its power because, by nature, a shadow cannot endure when faced with light. Observing these arising tendencies without directing, judging, suppressing, or succumbing to them is true subconscious purification. Every time we are mindful of a desire and choose not to respond to it, we are cutting off the supply that nourishes these latent tendencies. As desires gradually subside, the nerve pathways in the brain that once connected sensory experiences to repetitive responses begin to relax and atrophy, according to the principle of brain resilience. We are reprogramming our own spirit, a program not driven by primal sensual instincts, but by awareness and freedom. Exploring this subterranean chamber of the mind requires immense courage, for we will see the ugliness and horror of the ego, selfishness, jealousy, and hidden weaknesses. But remember, these are not us, they are merely fossilized remnants of past experiences. Facing the darkness within ourselves with compassion and impartiality is the final key to unlocking the basement, freeing our souls from the gravitational pull of samsara and allowing us to soar majestically into the vast emptiness, is when we shine the light of mindfulness into the basement of our minds, clearly seeing the roots of the latent defilements that manipulate our lives. Many may think that simply being aware is enough to make all suffering disappear as if by magic, but in the reality of the practice, the process of letting go or relinquishing the 5 sensual pleasures does not happen easily and gently like releasing a balloon. On the contrary, it comes with resistance, pain, and the most intense struggle. Why is letting go so painful, even though what we are letting go of is suffering, a cage, the desires that have burned our minds our entire lives? The answer hidden in the psychological mechanism is familiarity or a delusion. Humans are designed to seek security and familiarity. Our brains like to do the same things, think the same things, and feel the same things because it saves energy. Even if that familiarity is in the form of a toxic relationship or a job that destroys our health, as long as it remains familiar, the brain will interpret it as safe. Imagine you are holding a glowing red coal in your hand. That coal is radiating heat so much that the skin on your palm blisters and you can't breathe. You are scorched, in agonizing pain, tears streaming down your face, screaming for help, begging someone to put out the fire. But when someone kindly tells you, just open your hand, let go of the charcoal, what happens is you grip the charcoal even tighter, sobbing and shouting, I can't let go. If I let go, I'll have nothing left. Quote. It sounds ironic and illogical, doesn't it? But this is the clearest reflection of the human psyche when faced with letting go of the 5 sensual pleasures. We cling tightly to past anger and resentment as if they were precious treasures. We hold onto our fading physical appearance, our social status and praise, trembling with pain. We have suffered from these things countless times. But we don't have the courage to spread our fingers and let it go. The deep-seated reason is that we've already fused our very being to that burning coal. Who would I be without this anger? What value would I have without this job? What meaning would my life have without this painful love? It's this fear of the emptiness, or the void, that will result from letting go that drives the resistance to its fullest extent. When you begin to turn your back on the world of glitz and glamour, you refrain from criticizing others, you stop seeking brand-name possessions, and you begin to spend time in inner peace, your ego begins to feel threatened by the threat of loss. It starts to create a process of resistance. The most subtle form of this feeling will make you feel intensely lonely, alienated from the society around you. It will whisper in your ear, look, everyone else is so happy, only you are torturing yourself like this. Go back to your old life. Quote. This friction can even manifest physically. Some people experience restlessness, headaches, insomnia, or a feeling of tightness in the chest, as if a large rock is pressing down on them. This is a state where the neural structures in the brain are resisting the change. The old neural pathways, accustomed to the dopamine release from sexual activity, are being cut off, while new neural pathways of mindfulness and calm are trying to sprout and connect. This is a process of demolition and reconstruction at a cellular level. It is the brain itself that creates immense turmoil and pain. Psychologist Rogers once said that the strangest thing is that only when I accept myself as I am can I change myself. This principle applies perfectly to confronting the resistance of letting go of the 5 sensual pleasures. When the ego struggles fiercely, when desires rage, and when the fear of emptiness gnaws at the heart, what we need to do is not fight, not berate ourselves for not being able to cut off desires, and not try to force the mind to be calm against nature. What we need to do is accept and embrace that pain with the utmost gentleness. Observe the struggle of the ego, assess the mother looking at her child. While the hand is crying and whining because it's been thwarted, we simply watch its distress with compassion, acknowledging the pain in the palm from gripping the hot object, and the fear of having to open it. We allow those feelings to fully express themselves, with mindfulness providing a safe distance. And at a certain point, when the mind is weary from the tight grip, when wisdom flashes, clearly showing that attachment brings more suffering than the fear of losing the hand that has been clenched all its life, the hand will naturally loosen. The hot object that has burned us for so long will fall to the ground, the pain will fade, and the emptiness we once feared so much will be filled by the breeze. The chilling moment of true letting go isn't accompanied by the ringing of bells or golden light descending from the heavens. It's simply a feeling of lightness, a profound silence, and a faint smile that appears on the face, along with the realization that, in truth, we don't need those things to be happy. It's the quietest yet greatest victory, because it's a victory over ourselves, a victory that paves the way to eternal freedom, or what the Buddha called nirvana. The feeling of lightness after we dare to open our hands and let go of the burning coals of attachment is a beautiful and profound state. However, it often leads us to challenging questions. At the very end of this journey, the question is, if we desire nothing, if we have no cravings, no desires for possessions or status, what purpose would we have in living? Wouldn't we become soulless pieces of wood or lifeless stones? This is the greatest and most classic misunderstanding of humanity. We have been molded from birth by society and the capitalist system to believe that desire or ambition is the only fuel in the universe that drives human life forward. We believe that without the desire for a new car, we wouldn't have the energy to wake up and go to work. Without the yearning for love, we would never take care of ourselves to look good. We have tied progress to the 5 sensual pleasures, inseparable from them, to the point where we forget the nature of things. It has given us another kind of fuel, more powerful, cleaner, and one that never burns our minds, that is called chanda. Chanda is the love, satisfaction, and willingness to do things with a pure heart. It is completely different from tanha, craving. Tanha focuses on the result or what is received in return. It hungers for rewards, praise, and sensual pleasures. But chanda focuses directly on the action in the present moment. It is the happiness that arises while doing something, without caring what the final result will look like. Imagine an artist wielding a brush on a canvas or a musician closing their eyes and gently playing the piano. In the moment they are immersed in their art, they are not. They didn't think about how many millions of copies this painting would sell or whether this song would top the charts. They simply loved what they did, loved blending colors, loved arranging melodies. The desire for fame, money, or sensual pleasures was momentarily suppressed. Their minds became one with the work before them. In positive psychology, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls this state flow, a time when humans have their highest potential and experience the deepest happiness. This is the power of chanda, desire, enthusiasm. When we shift from living with desire to living with chanda, the whole world changes completely. You still go to work every day, but you don't do it just for a paycheck to satisfy your desires anymore. You do it because you see value in it. In your work, you see how your work helps solve people's problems. You find joy in using your intellect and abilities to the fullest. You continue to exercise and take care of your health, but not because you fear aging or want others to be infatuated with your appearance. You do it because you love and respect this body, because you want it to be a strong vehicle that will continue to carry you to create value for this world. When mindfulness replaces desire, the conflict in my heart will end. We will no longer be weary of chasing the shadow of happiness that can never be grasped, because that happiness has already occurred in every step we take, not at the finish line. Housework, once boring, will become a beautiful form of mindfulness. Washing dishes will become cleansing the mind, like sweeping the house, becomes sweeping away the chaos from our feelings. Every movement in daily life becomes an art of mindful existence, with purpose guiding our actions. But as I've said before, this transformation doesn't happen overnight. Desires or old habits will always knock on our door. They will come in the form of boredom, discouragement, or self-doubt. Why do we have to do things for others? Why don't we use our time to find happiness for ourselves like everyone else? Quote, "These whispers will get louder when we face difficulties or exhaustion. Our job is not to fight those voices. Simply acknowledge them, smile gently, and slowly pull ourselves away. Return your attention to your breath, to what you are doing in front of you. Use mindfulness as an anchor to keep your mind from drifting away with the winds of desire, and use volition as a sail to catch the winds of goodness, guiding the ship of your life forward gracefully through the vast ocean of samsara, without needing to stop at the islands of sensual pleasures to refuel your infatuation." Once you realize the power of volition that drives your life so beautifully, continue on the path of purifying your spirit from the 5 sensual pleasures, bringing back the mind that once wavered and soared in search of external happiness, to become steadfast and unified with your body in the present moment. Consider this. Why is the body so important, even though we just talked about letting go of attachment to form? It's because the body is the best and most honest anchor we have. Our minds are masters of time travel. They either flee from a painful past or rush ahead, worrying about a future that hasn't arrived yet. When we sit thinking about the joy of eating a fancy meal last week, our minds are lost in the past. When we eagerly anticipate seeing our loved one on Friday evening, our minds are racing into the future. Both the past and the future are territories where illusions and sensual pleasures operate most effectively. But our bodies never travel anywhere. They never exist in the past and never exist in the future. In the future, the body exists in this very second, here and now. The breath that enters and exits, the heart beating rhythmically, the blood being pumped, the heat and cold affecting the skin. Everything that happens to the body is a reality appearing in the present moment, 100%. Bringing the mind back to the body is like pulling the plug from the virtual world of desires and plugging it back into the pure source of reality. In modern Western medical science and psychology, there are discoveries that surprisingly align with the principles of Vipassana meditation. Dr. Elvanth Koch, a world-renowned psychiatrist and author of The Body Keeps the Score, explained that emotional wounds, past traumas, and cravings and addictive behaviors are not just recorded in the brain, they are deeply ingrained in the nervous system and tissues throughout our bodies. Stress, anger, or intense cravings manifest as muscle tension, abdominal pain, or irregular heartbeat. Therefore, to eradicate the latent defilements that nourish the 5 sensual pleasures, we cannot simply use logic or reasoning to refute them. We must work with physical sensations, or what Buddhism calls vedana. When a sensory experience occurs, whether it's a beautiful sight or a pleasant sound, before the mind processes it into liking or craving, a physical reaction always occurs first, perhaps a tingling sensation. The art of observing sensations is about noticing slight relaxation or muscle tension, but rather the art of observing feelings. It's about objectively noticing the sensations in your body, much like a scientist observing cellular changes under a microscope, without letting emotions interfere. When an intense craving arises, instead of letting your mind wander to thoughts of chocolate cake, bring your attention back to your body, examining it from head to toe. Notice how the craving affects your body. Is your stomach throbbing? Is saliva flowing? Does your chest feel tight or hot? Just observe those physical sensations. Don't hate them, don't try to suppress them, and don't judge them as feelings. When you experience negative feelings, simply recognize them as waves of energy forming and changing shape, which will eventually dissipate according to the laws of nature. The moment you shift your focus from chasing after fabricated stories or sensations in your mind to observing the actual feelings or sensations in your body, the automatic response cycle is instantly disrupted. The intense, swirling energy of desire is transformed into a gentle breeze passing over the skin. Consistently practicing mindfulness of the body, Kayanupasana, creates the most powerful shield for your spirit. You will be alert and acutely aware of your emotions from the deepest levels. In microseconds, the susceptibility to external temptations diminishes significantly because the mind, fused with the body, becomes solid, stable, and serene, like a solid rock mountain unmoved by storms or strong winds from any direction. Living in this complete state of the present moment is the taste of freedom that the 5 sensual pleasures cannot compare to. When mind and body are perfectly fused in the present moment, the resulting state is not a lifeless emptiness or numbness. On the contrary, it is the radiant light of heightened wisdom, an Ultra HD clarity that allows us to see the entire structure of the illusory world we've been so engrossed in. Our unwavering focus on the present moment acts like a magnifying glass, concentrating sunlight into a single point, generating heat energy capable of scorching the deepest hidden fuel in the cycle of rebirth, that which is called avidya, or ignorance of true reality. Avidya isn't worldly stupidity. Even highly educated individuals with master's degrees or the world's most brilliant scientists can still have a thick layer of avidya covering their minds. In this context, avidya refers to failing to see the truth that sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch are all impermanent, suffering, and not self. Avidya is the mastermind that deceives our brains into creating flawed equations throughout our lives. It tricks us into believing. It is said that these allurements equal lasting happiness, and losing them equals unbearable suffering. When the initial equation is flawed, every action in our lives becomes a race through a labyrinth with no way out. Imagine you're watching the world's greatest magic show. The magician on stage conjures a dove from an empty hat, levitates people, and makes gold coins fall from thin air. As long as you are an unaware audience member, you will be amazed, fascinated, and curious. You might even pay a high price to see this show again and again. The 5 senses are like this magic show. They attract us with their captivating colors, tastes, and sensations, drawing us in. We are infatuated and willing to pay a lifetime for the pleasure of desire. But when you hone your mindfulness and wisdom, when you successfully bring your mind back to the present moment, it's like being allowed backstage at a magic show. You'll see the wires hidden in the darkness, the secret compartments under the table, and the pigeons concealed in sleeves. The moment you realize the illusion, the old infatuation vanishes in an instant. You will never be fooled by that magician again. Not because you hate magic, but because wisdom has destroyed all delusion. This is the mechanism of wisdom-based liberation, or liberation through wisdom, when the mind is mindful enough to see the arising and ceasing of the desire to see that beautiful smile. In reality, everything is composed of skin and bones. A lavish meal ultimately becomes waste. Praise is merely sound waves vibrating in the air. When the mind repeatedly perceives these truths without embellishment, the ignorance that has gnawed at the heart is eroded. The brain updates its software, discarding erroneous equations and replacing them with equations of truth. In cognitive psychology, there's a concept called cognitive diffusion. which explains this state very well. Normally, humans tend to fuse themselves with their thoughts and feelings. When we yearn for love, we think, I am lonely, I need someone. Otherwise, I'll die. But when enlightenment arises, we step back and see that thought as just one event in our mind. We only realize, right now my brain is creating a set of thoughts about loneliness. The moment this distance is created, the destructive power of longing is immediately released. When ignorance is destroyed, the chains of dependent origination, or the cycle of birth and death in the mind, are severed. When there is no ignorance, there is no fabrication. When there is no fabrication, there is no craving. When there is no craving, there is no attachment or clinging. The moment the last chain breaks, the mind experiences a vast, boundless state, a light that does not come from external light, but from within. A ray of enlightened wisdom illuminates every atom of the soul. The fear of death, the fear of separation, and the fear of losing oneself vanish like mist dissolved by the morning sun, for the mind has realized that the self we have so diligently protected never truly existed in the first place. What has arisen and ceased throughout life is merely a natural phenomenon flowing according to cause and effect. This collapse of the ego at this level of intuitive wisdom is not a tragedy, but a celebration of the greatest freedom of all living beings, an awakening from a long slumber, a renewed awakening to see the world with truly pure and unblemished eyes. Our journey from the very beginning, the initial journey of being lost in the sweet cage of the 5 sensual pleasures, until the moment when wisdom shatters ignorance, leads us to the most important final question. What does life look like after being freed from these temptations? Most people think that those who have overcome desires or attained the state of nirvana must become indifferent, sitting silently in the forest with their eyes closed, unable to speak to anyone and no longer able to enjoy the beauty of this world. This is a huge misunderstanding. Nirvana is not a secret place of emotional death. In Buddhism, nirvana means the extinguishing of what? The extinguishing of the fires of greed, anger, and delusion that have tormented our minds and caused us anxiety throughout our lives. That is when these fires are extinguished, what remains is coolness, refined peace, and true freedom, a state we can experience in the present moment, or what is called sandithiko, which the practitioner will clearly perceive for themselves. Imagine this with me. There's a Zen parable about a man fleeing a tiger in the forest. He falls off a cliff, but luckily manages to grab onto a vine. While he dangles in midair, the tiger watches him down, and below lies a deep chasm with sharp rocks. Worse still, white and black rats are alternately gnawing at the vine he is holding, breaking it little by little. The white and black rats are like day and night, consuming our lives moment by moment. In that life or death moment, this man spotted small, bright red, perfectly ripe wild strawberries sprouting from a crevice in the rocks nearby. He reached out, picked one, and slowly chewed, savoring the sweet and sour flavors that spread across his tongue. He closed his eyes and exclaimed, "These are truly the most delicious strawberries I've ever eaten in my life." This story is the most beautiful conclusion to living beyond the illusion of the world. The man didn't deny the death that was coming. He didn't deceive himself into believing there was no tiger above him. At the same time, he was perfectly present in the moment. He was able to fully experience and savor the taste of the strawberry, or the sensual pleasure, without fear of the future and without regret for the past. This is it. The experience of enjoying worldly pleasures as an awakened being, once you reach the essence of transcendence, means you'll return to your old life. A world with traffic jams, nagging bosses, social problems, and countless temptations, but your inner world will have changed forever. You'll be like a guest in the most beautiful hotel in the world. You admire the architecture, you enjoy delicious food, you sleep on a plush bed, but you know deep down that these things aren't yours. When the time comes to pack your bags and check out of the hotel, which is death or separation, you'll walk away with a grateful smile, without crying or desperately trying to grab the hotel sheets or lamps. You'll still be watching movies, listening to music, and eating delicious food. Love your family with all your heart, but let that love be unconditional, free from attachment, a love that grants freedom to both yourself and your loved ones. You will work and earn money with joy and dedication, but business failures will no longer be able to crush your worth, because you will know that your true value is not based on the numbers in your bank account. The 5 sensual pleasures are not evil enemies that we must wage war against. Rather, they are the greatest teachers. Nature has sent them to test us, to tempt us, to pressure us, to cause our spirits suffering to the extreme, because only suffering can push humans to begin questioning. Step forward in search of freedom. If this world were filled with only everlasting happiness, we would remain asleep in this sweet dream forever, never discovering the potential of awakening. The practice of letting go of temptations is not a journey to a distant mountaintop, but a return to our true home within our own hearts, a home where peace always awaits, no matter how chaotic and frantic the outside world may be. You have held that key in your hand all along. Just stop chasing the shadows of desire, return to your breath in the present moment, and allow wisdom to do its work. Before we part ways in this series on the essence of the 5 sensual pleasures, I offer my blessings to all who have embarked on this journey. Listen with an open heart and journey with us to explore our minds until we reach a conclusion. If these stories are helpful and have ignited a light in your heart, I ask that you please like, share, and subscribe to our Panya Dhamma channel to spread this Dhamma teaching and peace to those struggling amidst the waves of chaos, and to encourage us to continue creating profound content like this. Always remember, the greatest freedom does not come from having everything you desire, but from not needing to desire anything to be happy. May you all find peace in your hearts and live a joyful life, like a lotus blooming beautifully above the water, every day. Goodbye for today.